Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here hanging out with the venerable, longtime columnist who will not be going on the road to Omaha this year, which would have really packed his summer schedule with a trip to Paris later on. And now everybody's jealous that we've started off the show with somebody else going to Paris and us not going to Paris, but that's the way it goes. Such is the price of relative fame, Scott Rabalais.
So it is. Well, the worst part is I get a really good hotel rate in Omaha for the 2 weeks.
Well,
yes, and a good location, Marriott points, lots of Marriott points.
Everybody's going to cry a river. Not for nothing. We're here obviously to discuss LSU. A thrilling ride through the postseason, frankly. Obviously a disappointing ride, a disappointing end to the ride. If you're an LSU baseball fan, LSU loses to North Carolina 4-3 in 10 innings. It was 4-3, right? Yeah, 4-3 in 10 innings in the championship game of the Chapel Hill Regional. But it was a thrilling ride nonetheless all the way until then. Probably a little bit of an unexpected ride. We will talk about that, obviously. We will talk about a little bit of summer football news, a little fun that Rab had in Destin among his many travels to the SEC spring meetings. And, of course, there's always something going on elsewhere. And gymnastics, there's a little bit of gymnastics news with some key athletes on the roster. And we're still waiting on Livy Dunn, and I guess we'll continue to wait, as will the rest of TikTok and the rest of the social world. We will get into all that, but yeah, Rab, you've one thing I'll just note, sort of on the way out, if you will, is that I think I certainly am jealous and always have been jealous of all you SOBs who get to go travel on the company dime. Not so much the travel part of it, because I'm a bit of a homebody. But when was the last time, be straight with us, when was the last time you paid for a hotel? Actually out with actual cash, on a vacation?
Points or
yeah.
Something? Oh, gosh, an actual hotel. I don't know. I'm doing that on this trip, on this Olympic trip, though. We were probably paying for one night.
Yeah,
Amsterdam on the way back.
Good for you. Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I have to think about it.
That makes everybody else sick, right? Because the rest of us actually have to pay out of pocket for the hotel stays.
That's right.
Unlike you guys who have got the frequent flyer miles and the hotel points and so forth. There's no kind of frequent eater, though, thing at Outback, is there? That's the sports writers. That's the daily double for the sports writer on the road.
No, I'm sure there's some kind of, everyone's got a club now, right? Join our club. Join our, get points.
Yeah.
You have points. Yeah, no.
Would be a shame. The Cheesecake Factory would lose money on you if that were the case.
That's true. I would be I have my own table in Cheesecake Factory.
Enough of this foolishness. We got to get back on track as usual. If you're watching, tuning in, or listening, you know that the Advocate's always been the number one destination for LSU sports coverage, and this podcast just another way for us to bring that great coverage to you. But if you haven't joined already, if you haven't signed up, please sign up and join the party and subscribe to The Advocate. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe, whether that's in print or digital. And speaking of subscribing, you should sign up for the LSU newsletter. That's free, and it's sent to your inbox daily. It's a daily newsletter, but Rab handles that lovingly 3 times a week. So you should sign up for that and get all the headlines, all the LSU headlines delivered straight to your inbox. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here typically every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Obviously, we wanted to wait one more day to see what happened with LSU, whether the Tigers were going to come home and host a super regional. Sadly, they are not. They will be coming home for good. But we wanted to wait one more day to find out what the LSU baseball team's fate was. So we're coming to you one day late, but we are typically here every Monday and Thursday. We may slow down here, obviously, as the summer gets in full swing and the off season hits in earnest, and there's just not quite as much to talk about with LSU. But hey, we're only one scandal away, right? So we'll see what happens. But no, we will likely reduce our frequency of show as we get to the summer, and then build back up as we get to camp, to SEC Media Days, and then camp, and then obviously football season, LSU versus USC on September 1st, which we will discuss a little bit here on this podcast as well. And if you need to stay up with us, though, you can always find our newest episode, and all our episodes for that matter, on all our social channels, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. Just search for that on YouTube. You should be able to find it, subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. You'll catch us live if you'd like to catch us live, and if you don't catch us live, you can catch us after the fact. And if you don't prefer that method, you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And so with that, Rab, I will just say, okay, we can start with the North Carolina game, the final game of the Chapel Hill Regional. But I would just say, can we take a moment to just discuss, why don't we even go back just a little bit to spend 30 seconds on the Ole Miss series to close out the regular season. It was a hell of a run that LSU had in the SEC tournament to get themselves to ensure that they were not only going to make it in the NCAA tournament, but also get themselves all the way up to a number 2 seed. Mm-hmm. And then once they got into the regionals, they kind of showed out. It was nail biting more often than it wasn't. But the fact of the matter was, or is, and we'll discuss this a little bit more in detail later on too. But listen, a month ago, if anybody would have told you you've got one game to win to make it to the Super Regionals, I think every single LSU baseball fan would have said, yeah, man, I'll take that right now.
Yeah, they got on a run. You remember they got swept at Tennessee, and after that, they really started to play better. And they got on a real roll going into the postseason. They swept Ole Miss in the final series of the season, then made it to the SEC tournament final, then get to this regional. And I'm sure North Carolina, they were not too happy to see LSU show up in Chapel Hill, and it was proven why, because they pushed them as hard as you can push them. So. Jay Johnson had to mix and match all season long, had to try different lineups and different pitching rotations, moving guys in and out of the starting rotation for the weekends. And they finally hit on a pretty good formula, and it was still tinkering. Tommy White ended up in the leadoff spot, in the last couple of games. But tinkering all season long, and maybe that speaks to why they didn't win a championship, or they came up just short, but they did find the right players to make a winning combination, and they put together a pretty good run towards the end of the season and in the postseason, and came up a little short, but it's not automatic. There's a lot of good programs out there, a lot of good teams, and LSU was one of them, but not quite. We can talk about this more. Maybe just missing a little something to be a championship team.
LSU finds themselves in quite a fight to open up the Chapel Hill Regional against Wofford before Stephen Milam, the smallest guy on the team. Maybe it's the shot heard round, Baton Rouge, and he'll forever be remembered for that. That was a second walk-off in how many days? Something like 4 days. It was the first time that an LSU player had hit a walk-off home run, thanks to Todd Politz, incidentally, for this nugget of news. First time that an LSU player had hit 2 walk-off home runs in less than a week since, I think, 1948.
1948, yeah. It was 2 walk-off hits.
Excuse me, walk-off hits.
The other guy didn't, in 48, didn't have 2 home runs. The first time someone's had 2 walk-off home runs ever in one season for LSU.
Pretty
which
impressive.
is hard to believe, all the home runs that the Tigers have hit over the years.
Especially back in the 90s, and really even back, coming all the way back around to modern day with some of the sluggers they've had here. So they dropped the pivotal game against North Carolina. North Carolina's best players sort of show out in that game. And then they find themselves in another fight. They go ahead and take care of Wofford. They fall down 5-0, and they had to come all the way back, and they wind up sort of win going
13-6.
Yeah, they sort of won going away. And then they had to beat North Carolina again, or for the first time to be able to play them again to force a winner take all. On Monday, and then on Sunday they come back and they do it. They get it done. They jump out to an 8-0 lead, and this may have been, looking back on it, this may have been sort of, well, it certainly did play a factor in how the final game wound up finishing off, because LSU built an 8-0 lead. You would love to have had maybe 1, maybe 2 pitchers be able to just sort of close that out, but North Carolina rallies and then gets men in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, and LSU then has to go to its bullpen and burn up a couple of more guys.
A lot of pressure, yeah.
Right. Those were high stress innings.
They stranded a bunch of base runners, but it was a lot of pressure on LSU, and Jay Johnson had to keep going to a different pitcher to try to get out of those innings, and they did. But it shortened up the bullpen for Monday's game for sure.
As we saw, and as I'm sure we'll get into, and I'm certain that as everybody woke up here on Tuesday morning in Baton Rouge, that was quite the topic of discussion, and we will discuss it as well. But first and foremost, how about Will Hellmers? Will Hellmers comes into this game this winner-take-all game on Monday. Sam Dutton starts. He can't get it done. He doesn't get an out. He's got to get pulled. And, of course, Jay Johnson's got a quick hook in a game like this.
Right.
Javen Coleman struggles a little bit, walks a couple of guys, and he's going to get a short hook, and he does. And at this point, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm probably speaking for most of the audience out there. Will Hellmers comes in, and you figure, well, okay, let's see if he can get an inning or two out of Will Hellmers. And Will Hellmers struggles a little bit, but then all of a sudden, my goodness, he finds this is easily the best game he's ever pitched, certainly the most clutch game he's ever pitched. The Jesuit grad, he winds up 5 2/3. At one point, he retired, 15 of 16 and 12 in a row. And he found himself in a groove, gives up 2 hits, walks 2, strikes out 4. Throws 71 pitches, faced 21 batters. He did everything that LSU could have ever asked out of him and more. And we saw quite a bit out of the LSU bullpen, which had struggled for so long during the regular season too, as well. You had more than one effort that was noteworthy.
Yeah, I mean, to advance and to have a shot to win, and LSU was right there. Obviously, they didn't win, but they were right there. You got to have some people who give you a performance that you haven't seen before. You give you an effort, something beyond what you think they're capable of. And Will Hellmers certainly did that longest outing. He's got that, they were commenting on the television, he's got that low, not a sidearm delivery, but a very low release point. And he had a lot of run on his pitches. He was especially tough on the, with that. I was a breaking ball. His pitches had a lot of movement on them, whatever he was throwing, and he was really keeping the North Carolina batters off balance. And can I just say, I one of my favorite things in sports is when you see someone go beyond what you think that they can do as an athlete or what they've done before. And we've seen that a lot recently in LSU sports history. Jasmine Carson in the NCAA National Championship game last year against Iowa, just dropping all those 3-pointers coming off the bench. It was the game of her life.
Yep.
Sierra Ballard in the national championship meet, leads off LSU on beam with her career high, a 9.5. And when they were trailing, just got to have it.
Yep.
Just these performances, you got to have it, and they come through in the clutch, and it's like
Christian Little down the stretch. He wasn't available in the Chapel Hill Regional, which wound up being pivotal.
You could point to a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's not because it's LSU. I just love seeing that from athletes who are like, where did that come from? Where did that performance come from? And people who can come through in the biggest moments with more than you ever thought they could deliver. And that's what Will Hellmers gave LSU last night. Gave him every opportunity to win. And he I think he mentioned it in Koki's story. I think he basically said he can go. They didn't win, but he can go out with his head held high. That he gave him everything he had.
And not only speaking of great moments and sort of players wanting the ball and wanting to be clutch and things of that, you saw when there was a mound visit and Will Hellmers, we don't know exactly what was said, but Will Hellmers probably told Jay Johnson in so many words, go fly a kite. I'm going to go. I'm continuing in this game.
And as a coach, I would love.
Absolutely.
I'd be momentarily offended, but I would love that.
Absolutely. You want a guy who's not willing to give it up. Who wants to continue and stay in the fight because he knew he had something going. So, but Will Hellmers goes 5 2/3, 71 pitches, and of course he leaves with a lead. And this has been and will continue to be much discussed. He leaves with a lead and turns it over to Gage Jump. Gage Jump pitching on 2 days rest. Now, several people have noted this would have been a bullpen day for Gage Jump. And clearly, once he got on the mound, certainly nothing was missing from his velocity. But you're thinking, at least I was thinking, watching this game, that, okay, bring in your hammer to close out the game. You've got a 1-run lead, and maybe if you're Jay Johnson, you just decide, I beg your pardon. I'm out of turn here a little bit. Will Hellmers gives way to Nate Ackenhausen, who then he winds up striking out the side, throwing 16 pitches. I actually thought that Nate was struggling a little bit with his command of his fastball, but nonetheless, I mean, my goodness, couldn't have gotten you. Could not have done a better job than striking out the side, which he did. Nate Ackenhausen then gives way to Gage Jump, and frankly, listen, if you want to make the argument that, hey, Nate Ackenhausen is doing okay and he's getting the ball over and he's obviously making guys miss when it counts, you can certainly make that argument and nobody could really fight with you. But I understand the thinking. Gage Jump, this is a bullpen day. He says he can go. Let's bring your hammer out there. Even if it's in a situation that he's never been in before, coming on in relief, he came out with a clean start, nobody on base, and you just let him mow him down. He got the first out, and he's 2 outs away. And, if he gets a key double play or whatever it is, or just retires the next 2 batters, nobody's talking about that. They're talking about what a great job by Gage Jump and by Jay Johnson running his bullpen and knowing his team better than anybody else as they go back home to Alex Box for a surprise home super regional. Right. Nonetheless, Gage Jump gives up a run in the 9th. And then to me, that was the real surprise, was that he came out for the 10th again.
Yes.
And that may have been a situation where Gage Jump told Jay Johnson, hey, go fly a kite. I want to finish this thing. But then you can also make the argument that Jay is the coach, and he needs to be the responsible adult and say, no, we gotta turn this over to somebody else. And anyway, that's obviously the debate as we wake up here today in Baton Rouge on Tuesday.
Let me start by saying there's no sport that opens itself up to second guessing more than baseball, right?
Nobody gets second guessed like a manager, or baseball coach.
Right. And you can go in so many different directions. How do you pitch? How do you play your defense? Who's your lineup? What order? All the pitches you call, all the things. I can see bringing Gage Jump out to try to close it out in the 9th. He's developed into your Friday night guy. And, I'm not a big fan, though, of bringing in pitchers in roles that they're not used to doing. That said, it happens in the postseason all the time, especially in the college postseason when, these guys, you play so many games in a row and in the major league playoffs, you have a travel day thrown in. Here you're just going day after day after day. And so, you can use up your bullpen, as you said, you had to use up more of your bullpen than you wanted to secure the win against North Carolina. And you had to do that on Sunday because you gotta do whatever it takes to survive to get to the next game. Then you figure it out. But I didn't think he was really fooling North Carolina that much in the 9th inning. And of course, he gave up the run to tie the game. So I don't have a big quibble with them using him, but I wish they would have gone to someone else in the 10th inning. Now, in Jay's defense, maybe he's thinking the game is tied up. We could be in for a long, protracted extra inning. This game could go 14 innings or something like that. And, he's a guy who's used to pitching a lot. But I don't know how much more they would have gone.
I was about to say that would hold more water with me if he were even on 3 days rest instead of 2. You're talking about he threw 102 pitches in his first game in the regional, and then now he's coming back and throwing 51. That's a lot to add. And I understand. I'm sure he wanted to be out there. And as I said, clearly, his velocity was coming 95 from the left side, and that's nothing.
Velocity looked good.
Yeah. But,
I just didn't think he was really fooling the North Carolina
batters. That's correct.
batters.
The movement must not have been at what it typically is because they were fine. They were connecting. And more to the point, let's talk about this more than anything. If you want to blame Jay Johnson for sticking with Gage too long, or for that matter, going to Gage and to begin with when he could have left Ackenhausen in there, because Ackenhausen, kind of a rubber arm, left-handed guy, doesn't throw very hard. If you want to make that argument, if you want to take that position, that's certainly understandable. Or if you want to take the position, well, geez, Gage, let's not forget LSU's defense. North Carolina played some great defense in that game. LSU's defense was suspect. It is what it is. Jake Brown misplayed a fly ball that really should have had him out of the 10th inning and came back to bite him. And let's not forget that LSU goes scoreless over the final 7 innings. This was a team that struggled for a long time during the regular season with two strike pitches and 2 out at bats and things of that nature. And they came up clutch a lot, not only in the SEC tournament, but also the Chapel Hill Regional. Fact of the matter is the bats went cold. They went radio silent, as our Koki Riley
great line. Koki, I'm jealous.
Went radio silent, and he had that up in this story at theadvocate.com here on Tuesday. And so it's this, you talk about it being a team effort. Well, it wasn't just Gage Jump. It wasn't just the coaching decision. It was a handful of things that goes into this.
Yes, and of course, one of the big glaring things in the 10th inning, they moved Jake Brown from center field to right field, and with 2 outs, they hit the ball to him at right field, and he just got tangled up.
Look, he lost it in the lights or something.
Yeah,
or just maybe.
I don't know that ball. I've never been to Bosch-Armor Stadium in Chapel Hill. It's obviously it's in a major league ballpark. The lights are way up there, and it was kind of a line drive hit, so it could have been right in the line of the lights. But he
might have just flinched though. He might have had a moment.
And he just he didn't catch the ball. The North Carolina runner gets to second on the error. They intentionally walk the next guy, Gallagher, to who had hit a grand slam and hit a home run
their
against
best
LSU.
player.
Yeah. So he's playing great. Their third baseman made a lot of great plays at third base.
Yes, he
Boy,
did.
robbed Tommy White of some hits, and then they get a single from Madera to drive in the run from second, the winning run, and it's unfortunate those things happen. But as they say, the ball finds you, and unfortunately, it found Jake Brown in that instance, who had earlier hit a home run.
That's right.
I mean,
that's right.
I'm not just dumping on the kid overall, but they moved him and they moved. It just so happens they moved him from center to right, and the ball found him in that crucial situation, and he didn't make the play.
And let's be fair. LSU did struggle on defense a lot this year. Seemed like they had sort of found themselves a little bit more in the post as they got down to the stretch into the postseason. But LSU did struggle on defense. Certainly some lapses, and that's it played a part here. LSU going scoreless in the final 7 innings. Listen, and it's not to say, listen, they fought on a lot of those at bats, particularly in the 9th and 10th innings. I thought. I mean, they kept at it. They kept fighting, but it just wasn't their day. And think about how many. Somebody hit it on the screws just straight to the. Was it Braswell? I can't remember now.
He hit one. There were a few
in the late inning. I mean, just just an absolute frozen rope goes straight to the guy. I mean, that's bad luck, and it's also baseball. So, but look, let's zoom out a little bit. LSU goes home, obviously short of expectations, because expectations, as we all know, in Baton Rouge, is that the LSU baseball team is supposed to go to Omaha and at the very least make some noise in Omaha, if not win the whole doggone thing, which is what they obviously did last year. I put this question to you when we were sort of setting up this show, and I worded it like this, and I'm kind of regretting it now, but you and I are both big Apollo 13 fans of the movie Apollo 13, where they call the mission a successful failure, right? Was this, given the notion that LSU struggled for so long during this season, was this, and then juxtaposed against how far they made it and how it ended, was this season a successful failure?
Well, I think in terms of LSU baseball and expectations, anytime you don't make it to Omaha, it's not a great season.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of schools can say, "Hey, we Wofford, we won our first NCAA tournament game."
Sure.
They beat Long Island in the elimination game. Sandwiched around the losses to LSU.
How about the Louisville Purple Aces? I don't think they're going to say that
Evansville?
they've had it. Yeah, Evansville.
Yeah.
Or excuse me. Yeah, Louisville. The Evansville Purple Aces are having quite a day right now. They're having the most successful day they've ever had.
But for LSU, you got to at least make it to Omaha, and like you said, you got to do something. That's the standard. When you've won 7 national championships, that's the standard.
And Jay Johnson has never run from it, and neither did Paul Maneri. They embrace it, and believe me, I know a lot of people maybe don't know Jay Johnson personally or intimately, but you want to talk about a man possessed. I mean, this is his life. This is all he does. It's not a surprise.
It's they started out number 3 in the country or something like that. Obviously they'd lost Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz and some other key players from last year, Trey Morgan, some other key players. But you thought they had Tommy White coming back. Is Jared Jones and Jared Jones had a great season. He struggled at times in 23.
Jake Brown came on. Michael Braswell came on.
Michael Braswell gave him a good year. They seem to have more depth of pitching than they did overall. Not a Skeens, obviously, but more depth of pitching this season. And they just, the SEC is a tough place to play. Man, they had one, ranked team after another to start SEC play after a really great non-conference start. Their non-conference record ended up being, they only lost 5 non-conference games all year if you include the NCAA tournament with the 2 losses to North Carolina. I mean, that's pretty darn remarkable, and it speaks to how tough the SEC is, right, as well. But they just seem to be lacking a little. They were not a championship team.
Right.
They obviously had a losing record in SEC regular season play. They made it to the SEC tournament final, but didn't win against the number 1 overall national seed, Tennessee. And then they lost the regional to a national seed in North Carolina. They just weren't a championship team, and they were missing some ingredient that they had last year, or ingredients, and that they'll probably have in the future. Just wasn't quite there.
That's a part of the reason why I called it. Why I say you can at least put it on the table that it was a quote unquote successful failure. You mentioned they lose in the SEC final, but they lost to Tennessee. Tennessee looks for everything like maybe the best team in the land. They lose the SEC tournament to Tennessee. They lose in the final of the regional to Chapel Hill to North Carolina, which might be might finish as one of the top 2 teams, might finish as one of the top 3 teams. I mean, those teams were as good as you could ever hope to see in an opponent. These were formidable opponents that LSU faced in the SEC tournament and in the regionals. One of the toughest regionals for my money out there,
and lost to both of them 4-3. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, these are not. Yes, obviously the standard is to win, but given where they were a month ago, I know that they're not ever supposed to be in that position. I understand that, but given where they were a month ago, I got to say it started to come together. And again, if LSU finds a way to either close out the 9th inning or win it in extra innings, they're coming back home for a surprise home super regional. And who among us doesn't think that they've got the firepower to beat West Virginia, and all of a sudden they're in Omaha?
Oh, I think
it's just that close. It really was just that close.
But it just took them a long time to kind of get it together. And like I said, they lost. I mentioned some of the players they lost. They also lost a Cade Veloso from last year's team, and
Jordan Thompson, just a great killer role player.
Gavin
guys like
Dugas.
That.
Just got veteran leaders, experienced guys that can come through for you in the clutch, and or take a pitch, get hit by pitch, and they just seem to be. It took them a long time to find that, but they finally kind of found themselves, and if that process could have started earlier, then maybe LSU would still be playing, and hosting a super regional, but. It just didn't quite, and it just shows baseball is hard.
Baseball is hard,
and there are a lot of there are a lot of factors that go into it, and there's the way your schedule sets up, and this guy developed, that one guy not developing. Now they have to start over again for 2025, and we'll see what kind of team. But the standard will be the same next year.
That's correct.
The expectations will be the same.
Let's go through. Gage Riley is obviously traveling right now, headed home, and hopefully he'll sleep for a week once he gets home. But we did ask him to sort of put together a rundown of who's leaving, who's coming back, who's likely to stay, who's likely to go. And as Rab puts on his reading glasses, he will go through that up and down the list, if you would.
Obviously, you have draft eligible juniors, like Tommy White, Gage Jump, Luke Holman. They're likely to leave. Jared Jones is a 50-50. Koki said he's a draft eligible sophomore, so he can come back, but can also go because he turns 20 by the certain date.
Yep.
That's the rule. Griffin Herring is also draft eligible. I think he's in the same role. Josh Pearson. He says probably worth monitoring and see what he does, but his brother's on the team next year, so he might want to come back, and that might be a factor for him. Hayden Travinsky, Malazzo, Christian Little, Nate Ackenhausen, they're all out of eligibility,
right.
So they're done. Thatcher Hurd is another junior comeback. They were talking during the regional.
Had another interesting year. I'll put
an
it
interesting
like that.
year,
yeah.
And he kind of maybe found it a little bit. He's certainly got. He kind of reminds me of Mason Smith in football. Didn't have a great year, but he's got the measurables that scouts and teams are going to be intrigued with. I'd be shocked if someone didn't make him a fairly high round draft pick. You see him going to the 5th or 6th round, which is plenty good enough to want to go. But we'll see what he decides to do. He said Justin Lower and Fidel Eloa are worth watching as far as that goes. They have the number 1 or 2 recruiting class in the country coming in, so that's great. But that's young players. We said they're Koki thinks they're going to at least have to hit the portal looking for a veteran third baseman to replace Tommy White, who we assume will leave, and some starting pitching. So that's where they are. There's some stuff to work with, but there's a lot of holes, and it's the typical baseball postseason.
And it'll be
LSU.
Right, and it'll be another wild off season. And don't we all assume that LSU is going to be active in the transfer portal? Whether a baseball coach wants to be or not, because it's getting stickier and stickier, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. So many players want to, they want to hear before they even start talking about the school and the program. Hey, where's my money? And that's just you want to call it an ugly fact. I mean, hey, make every dollar you can. God bless.
Maybe I'm being. No, I would say that. Yeah, you make a good point. It's very valid. Maybe I'm being a little rose-colored glasses about it, for LSU, but I think playing for LSU is an extra cachet.
Oh, it should be from a standpoint of one would assume that there's probably, you're certainly going to have more money in the pot, more NIL money in the pot than Evansville or whoever else. That's a bad example.
I like those purple aces, don't you?
Yeah, that's a bad example. But, you're going to have, maybe more so than, even like a Fullerton or, one of these old traditional college baseball programs because the money is there and the desire is there and the resources and so forth. It's not. If I had to bet, I would say that it's not the most pleasant thing for Jay Johnson and these coaches to have to deal with because it's probably a little bit frustrating that you have to talk about money before you talk about fit and selling a guy or whatever. But, all that having been said, they've done a great job in the transfer portal to this point, and they've also found not just the headliners, but again, the Michael Braswells. Who among us would have thought that he would, first of all, wind up at LSU? Second of all, Jay Johnson sold him on, yes, we can make you a better hitter. And I'll be damned if he didn't make Michael Braswell a better hitter, especially in SEC play. So, well done.
Look, you can tell recruit. Yeah, there's NIL money transfers, potential transfers. There's NIL money. It's a program with great tradition, and a lot of guys going to be a chance to start or play considerably, right away. And sometimes these transfers work out, some they don't. Mac Bingham, who played for Jay at Arizona, came over here.
No reason to believe that he wouldn't hit somewhere close to what his average was in Arizona, and it just wasn't.
It just wasn't there for him this year, so it doesn't always work out for everybody.
Right.
So it'll be an interesting offseason, but I think LSU fans is right. There's reason to be concerned. Because they concerned. Can they get back to Omaha and can they win? That's what you always talk about. I mean, it's a different dynamic for Jay Johnson than it is for Matt McMahon, quite honestly.
Correct.
Or something like that. But it's just. Not just to get in the NCAA tournament, which now that would have been a failure if they didn't make it this year, but they did, and now it's to get back there. And like I know people, especially today, they're going to have a lot of feelings about Jay Johnson and the coaching staff. He brought together. I think the guy is a really sharp.
If you spend any time around him, he's as sharp as they come. He's as dedicated as he come.
Dedicated,
and
big on analytics, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, But that is the modern. He's got the modern coaching approach. Nose hitting. If he's obviously got a good pitching coach, and his pitching coach left Wes Johnson, and they're still playing Georgia as a national seed. But I would expect LSU to be back there in contention once again next year somehow.
So let's shift the focus a little bit because baseball season is over, and so the dog days are now suddenly upon us. Everybody, of course, as soon as the last out is made, either in softball or baseball, usually baseball, that means that the long summer is here, and people already start looking forward to football. While you were in Destin for the SEC spring meetings last week, Rab, there was a little bit of, this is the God's gift to talkers like us, and we're talkers right now instead of writers on this podcast. The story that came out from Matt Hayes, which you later confirmed through some sources, that USC made what appeared to be some extensive, as they say, efforts to get out of this season opener against LSU in Las Vegas on September 1st. That's certainly fun to talk about, and I think it's doubly fun to talk about given who USC is. They're certainly one of the glamour programs in the United States and always have been, and seemingly would not be interested in backing down from anybody, but also very intriguing given who is coaching at USC right now and sort of what his reputation has grown to be to this point. So, Rab, take it away.
Yeah, credit to Matt Hayes Saturday down south. He said that USC tried to get out of the game, and they were obviously they're moving to the Big Ten this year, so they were a little concerned. Apparently, I haven't really looked at their schedule.
They do have a killer schedule.
They have a really tough schedule. Trying to bounce back. Remember they got off to a great start last year, and then they lost like 5 of their last 8 games or something like that. So trying to bounce back under Lincoln Riley, their coach, who people will remember was a name that we were all hearing for the LSU job.
I still happen to whatever anybody else says, I still happen to think that the job was his if he wanted it. We'll never know for sure, I guess. But and he said, they always say, I never had any contact with LSU. That's semantics because you might not have actually spoken to anybody, but it doesn't mean your agent wasn't on the phone round the clock.
Round the clock, right? Exactly. Yeah, I'm coaching the team. I'm focused on these things. But I remember we said Leah Van, who used to write for us.
Yep.
She was at home in Fort Worth for Thanksgiving, and she went up to Stillwater for the Bedlam game, the Oklahoma State game, and it was in the post-game press conference. And he said, "I haven't talked to LSU. You didn't ask me about USC, did you, bye?"
What a wild 24 hours, 48 hours that was, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. And then
it was that night actually that you had heard.
Wasn't that a Friday? Was that a Friday night?
That was a Saturday game.
It was on Saturday. Okay.
Well, I can't remember who LSU. This is sad. I can't remember. It must have been A&M. I can't remember who LSU was playing because that was unfolding at the same time LSU was playing Texas A&M.
I'm using this as a prop. To share a little story. I heard from a source during the game, after the game, that the LSU board members were talking about Brian Kelly at halftime. Yeah, they were talking about him as being the guy. And I remember going up to Wilson after we got done with our writing. I wrote Brian Kelly's name on my notebook, and I go, "I'm going to show you a name." And he goes, "Oh my God!"
Wild.
And it turned out to be,
as they often are, these coaches.
But anyway, so Brian Kelly's the LSU coach, and Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma at that point to go to USC, and I mean, it's supposed. I'm just hearing this from an LSU angle. I haven't talked to anyone at USC about it, but it certainly seems, plausible. There was talk in that first story that USC tried to find other opponents for LSU. I didn't think it got that far. Now, Scott Woodward told me no one came to him with this information, but as you said,
it doesn't mean one of his top lieutenants wasn't handling this thing around the clock.
So the game will be played. So as long as make sure people don't have any concerns who've bought expensive hotel rooms in Las Vegas and flights. The game is going to be played on September 1st in Las Vegas. They're going to play, and it's. Obviously, it's on ABC. The ESPN, ABC would have been pretty perturbed had that game not come off. But it is interesting that schools try to get out of games all the time. I mean, it does happen,
and that does happen. And that LSU has had to push games down the road, and for one reason or another, for all these different home and home series or neutral site series they've had. But I think it's interesting, especially given sort of the reputation that Lincoln Riley has gained. Because I think part of the, whether it's fair or not, I think part of the narrative to this point was not necessarily one who's always got the stomach for a fight.
Yeah.
He, whether this is fair or not, the one of the narratives or one of the theories that he got out of Dodge, got out of Norman, Oklahoma, because he didn't want to have to bother with going to the SEC and having to go with the knockdown, drag-out fights week after week after week. He maybe necessarily wasn't feeling that. And, of course, he makes it to USC, and now he finds himself in the 18-team Big Ten, part of the Big Ten Western Front. And so now listen, they get to USC. He's got a Heisman winner. They have a nice first year, but then his second year there, bottom falls out. They don't play much defense, which of course is the one of the fun narratives about an air raid. Somebody from the air raid tree. They lose a couple of tough games, and after one of those games, he is sick and can't come onto his own coach's show to answer questions and all this. It's like, well, this guy doesn't seem like he's got much of stomach for a fight, and doesn't necessarily think that he can go up against a team with another dynamic offense. Whether that's fair or not, that seems to be. Now, of course, as soon as we get done to saying all this, LSU, which incidentally hasn't won an opener since 2019,
right?
LSU maybe goes out to Las Vegas and lays an egg.
No, but
to a guy who seems like he was trying to dodge a fight.
Assuming everything that myself and other reporters have heard is true. I mean, it's a huge game for both teams.
Oh, my
and Brian
goodness.
Kelly, for his part, has not shied away from that. He said, we got to win this game. We haven't won. He's like, we haven't won an opener. He was saying that in Destin.
Right.
We haven't won an opener since 2019. It's well documented. He said, we haven't won an opener since I've been here. Is what he said. Well, so they lost to Florida State both years, but you go back to 20 and 21 against Mississippi State and UCLA out in the Rose Bowl. So it's been a long time, and it's obviously. In the new dynamic of the college football playoff, a 12-team playoff, you can handle a loss. You're okay with a loss,
especially early in the season.
But if you lose the opener, then you have to play in the SEC, where the chances are you're going to drop a game. Chances are everyone's going to drop a game, right? At least one. So that you can't. That's the most you can reasonably afford. A 10-2 team. Okay, you're going to play at home against Colorado.
So in the first round.
I don't know who are you going to play, but it's a big game for both teams. And so with the transition to the Big Ten, it's all plausible that USC and Lincoln Riley are thinking this is a little tougher than we need. We'd be better to play some directional school for our first game instead of LSU. But it just adds to it, right? It just adds to the whole thing around LSU and USC. They have not played since 1984. USC came here in '79. LSU went out to the Coliseum in '84. They both won on their other team's field. Of course, the split national championship in 2003.
From 20 years ago. Yeah.
Do you remember the story that came out of that? They invited then President Bush invited both teams to the Rose Garden.
Stripe the front lawn.
He said, we got the Rose Garden right here. We got to. It was pretty funny. What he said. But there's been that lingering thing, like, not that this settles anything. They both can claim a national championship. And I've always contended, people argue with me, if LSU had been the AP national champion in 2003 and USC had won the BCS title, people here would claim the national championship just as much.
Of course.
So don't give USC a hard time about claiming the AP national championship. LSU would have claimed it, having not won one since 1958. But there's been this lingering thing, we were better, you were better, and it'll never get resolved. And this game doesn't mean anything other than bragging rights, but it just adds to the whole thing of it, and it's pretty delicious, actually. When you think about it.
It is. One of the just anything else from Destin that stood out to you, Rab, in terms of what's going on?
Obviously the big talk. Two things was that scheduling, which has not been has been such a front burner topic the last two SEC media days. Spring meetings was kind of pushed to the back burner. The SEC, of course, is going with a temporary 8-game format this year and next. And what they do for 26 and beyond is still up in the air. It has to do with a new TV deal with ESPN and ABC, perhaps, because when they made the deal, they hadn't added Texas and Oklahoma yet. Right. Now they have. So a lot of moving pieces. People at LSU still say they're going to get to a 9-game schedule, but certainly possible that they won't.
I've always said that I always thought that TV was going to be the top. Now the contract, it's an issue of the contract too. That they're going to want to. The league is going to want the networks to pay more, and it's not necessarily part of the contract. Go ahead.
And a big reason is revenue sharing that is coming to the. They got to find.
Of course, they're going to have to find every dollar they need.
About $20 million more a year.
And there's only one more place to go, at least at the moment, unless you start talking about private capital, which I don't want to screw with at this point.
I don't think LSU is going to go to the private capital route.
Okay. And so, most schools in general there's only one place to go for more money, and that is TV. And so if ESPN and ABC, if I were them, I would rightly say, hey, look, that's fine. We'll pay more. You've got Texas and Oklahoma now. But we also want better inventory. We're tired of Alabama versus Chattanooga. We're tired of LSU
because they're
versus
showing all
Towson.
those games.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're at home. Now, if an SEC team plays on the road, they could still be on a different network. Alabama goes to Wisconsin. That game's on Fox in September. But all the SEC home games and all the conference games are on one of the ESPN or ABC networks. So they're going to want more and better games. And all the schools need even more money. So a ninth game with a greater TV contract makes sense. The other options are to unfortunately cut sports, and I'm afraid that's going to happen, and to cut expenses. And that was another big talk of eliminating walk-ons. And obviously football coaches always they
never want less.
They never want less. They want more money, more facilities, more players, more coaches, all those things. And so, I hate the idea of them doing away with walk-ons personally, but I don't think it's going to save that much money. But okay, it was something that was discussed.
That's an effort to either for them to save themselves from themselves, or an effort to do the doomsday Chicken Little scenario and raise everybody. Oh, wait a minute!
And they can say we're the golden egg, right? We're the golden goose. And it's true. Can I say something a little bit? And as a slightly the risk of offending you, because I know your father was an academician and my father-in-law was an academician, but this whole thing with revenue sharing and this whole settlement that they've come up with is so typical of college athletics and how colleges are run. It's like, let's make a decision and let's come up with this big thing, and then we'll figure out how it's going to work. And what's one of the biggest things you got to figure out? The whole title is it based on revenue? The revenue produced by the sports, and obviously what sports produce the lion's share of the revenue, football and men's basketball, because of the NCAA tournament contract. And then, or is it going to have to be Title IX based? Because obviously everything is equal right now. We got the same number of scholarships for men and women. You have to provide the same number of facilities and opportunities and everything. And while women's sports are gaining a lot of popularity and recognition and importance, just jumped off the page the last couple of years, they're still not bringing in the revenue that football and men's basketball are. So they have no idea. They have no idea how that's going to work. And I'm floored and I'm not because it's like
No,
there's a
look
lack
what they've
of
been doing for the
practical-
last 100 years. They fought every piece of legislation that would have, they fought. And why wouldn't they? Hey, we've got free labor here, and we're making tons of money. And why would we pay the athletes? And oh, by the way, this is going to be the end of college athletics as we know. Now everybody's still as much as interested in college football as they've ever been, if not more. And so, all these sort of things that were supposed to be doomsday, and it's the end of this, that, and the other, as we know, it's the end of the way it is. But it's clearly not. There's no less interest in LSU football than there's ever been.
I don't buy all the doomsday scenarios and stuff like it. Yes, it's changing,
but it is a concern. I mean, you're right. The women's tennis team is going to have to start, and the men's tennis team, and the bowling teams are going to have to watch out.
If I was on the men's tennis team somewhere, or the men's golf team, or maybe bowling, or one of the few men's gymnastics programs that there are, I'd be concerned, because you're going to have the Title IX thing is not going away.
Right.
You're going to have the same number of scholarships, but you can reduce the number of scholarships on the men's side, or have more women's scholarships if you want. But
I'm still not sure they're not going to cut 4 men's teams and 1 or 2 women's teams. There's nothing to stop them.
That's very, very possible. It's very possible. So it's like, as Brian Kelly said, we're trying to put the plane together at 30,000 feet.
That's it.
And it's not the best way to fly. But going back to what you said, it's like, this is the end of college sports as we know it, and in a way it is. But it's still going to be on the field. It's still going to exist. Scott Woodward made a great point to me that he said, everyone said free agency was going to be the end of the NFL. He said, it's looking pretty good.
Looks okay.
Looking okay. Yeah. Still pretty popular, obviously the most popular sport in America.
Listen, the NCAA, when in 1984, when Oklahoma and Georgia sued, to be able to televise their own game, this is going to be the end of college athletics as we know. Really? now you're PO'd when a game isn't on some sort of streaming or television device. You and I, old heads, we remember what it was like to have the Keith Jackson game, and that was pretty much it for the weekend.
Yeah, for those of you youngsters out there, you could be on television 3 times in 2 years. Yeah. That was it.
That's incredible, isn't it? I mean, so listen, things don't stay the same. And change is always difficult, and there's no doubt that this is difficult as well. And just as you say, they're trying to build the plane while they fly it, but it's going to happen.
But I have sympathy for people in college athletics and colleges trying to figure this out, and then I don't, because look, the money they've been rolling in the money for a long time. Right.
We talk about like the college coaches. Well, now recruiting is year round, and now we have to deal with NIL, and players can leave at the drop of a hat. If you're an assistant football coach at one of these power programs anymore, you're making $1 million. Like,
I'll
tell you right now,
paying Blake Baker $2.5 million.
I'll tell you right now, I will gladly work 52 weeks a year for $1 million or a couple cool million. I'll be unhappy for at times, but I'll soothe myself with a big stack of cash. I'm only going to be so. Now, if you want to talk about the tennis coach, yes, I've got the world of sympathy for you, because that's a whole different animal.
What you want to hear, I think, is what Brian Kelly said to me in a sit-down interview before Destin. Is like, I was like, a lot of coaches like you, who are veteran coaches, have gotten out. They're like, I don't want to deal with this anymore, all these changes. But people like him and Kim Mulkey have tried to,
certainly embraced it.
Embraced it. He said, I like trying to figure out. He said, I kind of like the chaos and trying to figure out how to use that to our advantage, because the implication being not everyone is going to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what you want to kind of hear. And I don't get the impression LSU is looking for private equity. I don't get the impression that they're looking to cut any sports. Everybody's going to have to really examine their expenses and everything. And LSU is now about a $200 million a year concern, in athletics. But it's a fascinating time. It's a bit of a scary time, but I don't think college sports is going away. And apparently, what you hear, there's a lot of talk. Make the athletes employees. Apparently, a lot of them don't really want that. If you,
and we're going long here, and I think that's okay, because I think we stumbled into a couple of interesting topics. Of course, I heard that argument, and I heard the argument of like, well, wait a minute, if I'm an employee and they do some sort of collective bargaining agreement, all of a sudden there's sort of a salary cap. And I can only get so much. Taxes and all that stuff. Now, if it's NIL, it's a little more free and loose, and you can do your own deal, so to say, and you can also get endorsements and things of that nature. So I don't know. You're not quite as bound right now. It's kind of free agency. I used to say it's free agency year to year, but in a lot of ways, it's almost moment to moment. If it's October and you're some DB and you're having a standout year, you think there's not somebody from, pick a powerhouse, from Miami who's sending back channel messages. Hey, I noticed that you're having a great year. Keep us in mind, at the end of the season, because we'd sure love to talk to you, things of that nature. So you're almost free agent moment to moment, in addition to being year to year. And there's not a whole lot, as they say, guardrails in place to be able to sort of limit any of that.
And to say that that's unfair to the schools, you can say that, but scholarships have always been year to year.
That's right.
No college athlete is promised a 4-year or 5-year scholarship.
Right.
None of them.
And coaches used to block transfers and things like that. So colleges have done okay for quite a long time.
One last thing that came up in Destin was the prospect, and it's just being talked about right now, that because of all this, as an offshoot of it, they're talking about cutting things, but baseball might finally become a fully scholarship sport.
Sure, 25 scholarships or whatever it is.
So, instead of just the 11.7. So that's just in the formative stages. But I would imagine LSU would be one of those schools that will do that. And they also got the advantage of the TOPS program for in-state athletes. So I think LSU will be well positioned for in that world.
And would still be able to offer some sort of NIL deal or put these players in front of Marucci or whoever it is that they think they could get a good endorsement deal with. One last thing before we wrap this up, because you just got off the phone or you just recently spoke with Jay Clark, the LSU gymnastics coach. We're all patiently waiting on Livy Dunn's announcement, which I'm sure will be. Well, all of TikTok will be waiting on it, and I'm sure that's how that'll come out. If we
lots of clicks for us all.
Yes, that's right. that's correct. That's what we're waiting on, especially in the summer now. We're going to be begging for clicks. But no, we're waiting on Livy Dunn's announcement. But there's some other news coming out of the LSU gym program too. Yeah,
Connor McLean, who had a great freshman year for LSU, was in a meet the Core Hydration Classic is what I hate to have to drop the name of the sponsor, but that's what it's called, in Hartford, Connecticut on May 18th, and she tore her Achilles warming up for floor, not even competing, just warming up.
Terrible.
She came back to Baton Rouge. She had surgery. The news is relatively good for Connor. I talked to Jay Clark. She's back home in Las Vegas right now. Recuperating, but the hope is that for the start of the season in January, she'll be able to do uneven bars and balance beam, because those are less impact on your legs than vault and floor. And then at some point in the season, that she'll be able to do all 4 events.
But how great would it be to start the season for her to be able to be on beam? Because that's she's not only LSU's best,
she's world class on
beam.
Yeah, she's absolutely world class. In that meet before she got hurt, she was 3rd behind only Simone Biles and Suni Lee. Yeah, the last 2 Olympic gold medalists in the all around on that event. So the news is good. It's a 6 to 12 month recovery process, to be fully back, and she may not be able to do all 4 events all next year, but they're hopeful, as if things progress as they should, that she will be ready to do a couple of events in January. And then another thing, she was trying to make it obviously on the U.S. Olympic team and go to trials. One of the LSU recruits, Kalia Lincoln, who won a couple of gold medals in the Pan Am Games last fall, pulled out of the U.S. Championships. That was held in Fort Worth, the same place where they had the national championships. But she petitioned the U.S. It's what you do, and it's politics. Right. She petitioned USA Gymnastics to be invited to the Olympic trials, and she has been. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be at the end of the month in Minneapolis. And she, talking to Jay Clark, thinks she has a shot. She's a very accomplished gymnast. But there's a lot of great gymnasts. He said it's approaching a dream team.
I was about to say U.S. Gymnastics trials and U.S. track and field trials are 2 of the most roughshod, cutthroat elimination events.
5 spots on the U.S. gymnastics team.
Yep.
And if you make it, they're virtually guaranteed to win the team gold medal, plus whatever other events they might win. So she's got a shot, and like Jay said, they only allowed 2 petitions to be accepted, her and Shalise Jones. So obviously they wouldn't have accepted her petition if they didn't think she was worth giving a shot to, that she might have a shot at the Olympic team. So it's worth watching to see if she can sneak onto that team, snag that 5th spot on the U.S. gymnastics team, or be an alternate, and then Of course, Aaliyah Finnegan is going from LSU for the Philippines.
We'll be patiently waiting now that the season's over. We'll all be patiently waiting for the Rabbies. The end of the season, Scott Rabalais awards for LSU best this, that, and the other from the year. But
at the moment, I'm going home to work on my book, my
yes.
Tiger Stadium Turns 100 book.
Yes. So
you know what we did yesterday? I'll tell you this. People, obviously it's about Tiger Stadium, but I wanted to include just a little something about where LSU used to play. People may or may not know. Probably a lot of people know the campus used to be where the state capitol is downtown, and they outgrew the campus. So in the 20s, they moved to what was south of Baton Rouge, out of town at the time, really. And State Field, where they played, was pretty much between where the Capitol building is and the Arsenal, up on the hill. So I got out there with, we kind of figured out where the field is. I got out there with Michael Johnson, and he had his drone camera, and we shot that part of the gardens, the grounds, and it's kind of near the lakes, just to show people this is pretty much where it was, because it's very difficult to figure. There's nothing commemorating the campus. They tore down all the buildings except for the Pentagon barracks that are still there. So anyway, that's just it's one little. We work really hard, Perryn, don't we, for one little snippet, one line, one photo.
All those sort of little. Those are interesting, very unique bits. Just all these sort of little intricacies that people might not know about Tiger Stadium. I remember when they built the east side, the upper east side, the upper deck. One of the things, and it makes sense if you think about it, but you don't really think about it until somebody says, at least I don't, because I'm not an architecture guy. No part of that upper deck is actually, no part of that structure is actually touching the original part of Tiger Stadium. It's actually just sort of standing there right on top of it.
Yes.
So all these sort of little interesting little, I'm sure there's probably, I know you made a call out, Rab, there's probably any number, thousands of people who are still old enough to remember living in Tiger Stadium, and they must have had some great stories too. We'll get into that.
My cousin Doug Clavier, who's my age, lived in North Stadium, and I need to give him a call and ask him about his experience. But I thought every stadium, growing up, every stadium had dormitories in it.
No, very unique. It's very unique. It was a very unique matter. So we got plenty to talk about this summer. We will talk about it, just not quite as frequently here on the LSU Sports Insider. We've been coming to you on Mondays and Thursdays typically, but we'll probably slow that down as we head into the dog days here. We'll have some topics. I've got some topics squirreled away that we may or may not discuss, or that somebody may or may not discuss here on the LSU Sports Insider. And so be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for some new episodes whenever they come out. Probably once a week, but we haven't decided that for sure. So please check us out. Continue to check us out and see. We'll be on all our social channels, specifically the LSU Tigers on YouTube channel. LSU. I can't speak anymore. I've lost it. The YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. There you have it. Search for LSU Tigers on NOLA.com on the YouTube, and you can find us there. You can subscribe. You can catch us there live. And if you don't catch us live, you can catch us after the fact. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. And, of course, we'll be here throughout the summer at The Advocate, at theadvocate.com. You know where to find all our great work, all our writers' great work. Please subscribe. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe and sign up to listen. There's always breaking news, even in the summer. Something always seems to happen around LSU. So, and Rab will be at the Olympics. There will be plenty of LSU athletes and Louisiana athletes there competing in Paris. So sign up for the LSU newsletter as well. Get all the headlines delivered straight to your inbox. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. Rab, we went way longer than I thought we would on this thing. Well, we got to blabbing a little bit, and it was fun. I appreciate you coming in here.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll come back on Thursday and do it one more time. So for Scott Rabalais, for Amelia Cotton behind the glass, I'm Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.